Today I'm sitting down with Chris Jew, also known as the Glamping Guy on YouTube, who accidentally launched Monument Glamping in his Colorado backyard. What started as a simple tent for him and his wife during a remodel has now grown into 8 glamping tents, with even more on the way, including a 24 cabin project. If you've ever thought about turning your own backyard into a glamping site, this conversation is packed with tips and insights to help you get started. Welcome.
Hello, Laura. Thanks for having me on.
I would love to know what inspired you to start Monument Glamping.
Ooh, that's a good story. I love sharing this one. It started in 2019. Okay, this is pre-COVID. I was an English teacher, not making a lot of money, but just chugging along. And I was a teacher, so we had the summers off. So we said, you know what, let's remodel our bedroom. It's kind of a fixer-upper. To prepare for it, I built a platform in my backyard and erected our hunting tent. So it was a wall tent and moved our master bedroom outdoors. Loved
Really?
it. Just so awesome. And for about a month we lived out there. And at the end of the month, when we moved back in, we decided to put it up on Airbnb, and we booked out the rest of the summer. We couldn't believe it.
Wow.
So we were onto something. I didn't even know what glamping was at the time. And then ever since then, it's just been growing. The next year, growing to demand, by the way. So the demand was there because the next year we put up 2 tents. I got a tent off of Craigslist and just said, hey, let's do another one. And we booked out both of those tents up, and then started making some serious money. That was some good cash in the pocket. And then that became, hey, let's take the side hustle seriously. But I did think that maybe that would have been the COVID year. So that was 2020 when we did the 2 tents. But the third summer, we did it real seriously. We put up a 3rd tent. We opened up 3 container homes, which my son was building at the time. We partnered with a neighbor, so an adjacent neighbor, and we were really just taking it very seriously. And we made nearly $100,000 that summer.
Wow.
So then it was like, I was making less than 50,000 off my teaching job. So it was like, no, why am I teaching? and we did start taking it very seriously. Now that was year 3. We just finished up our 5th season. We did very well. We now own 2 properties. So not only this property, but a second property on the other side of town. This last year, we got all of our special use permits in line. I got a first special use permit for our second property. That was done administratively. And then the permit that I had here, I got a modification done. So now I went from 8 to 12 units in this property.
Okay.
So that's where we're at. We're kind of locked and loaded for an awesome 2025.
Wow.
We're up to our eyeballs in site development. I have 8 units open right now. Which doesn't seem like a lot. Well, it is pretty good. I mean, I make a living off it, but we have 12 units permitted on this property and 24 units on the other property. So by the end of 2025, maybe by the end of 2026, we're going to have 36 glamping units on 2 different properties. So we're pretty excited. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So let me see if I'm understanding this. So you started with just a bedroom that you built. Did it have any sort of plumbing or electrical or anything, or was it just kind of a room?
Yeah, it was just a room. So it's, it's an auxiliary dwelling unit. I didn't even know what an ADU was back then either. It's like I pretty much put a tent up and lived in it. We ran an extension cord to the tent to charge our phones and charge the lamp up and make things just operational that way. I mean, we had the house to go back to, so we were living in the tent for a month while we remodeled the bedroom. So we tore it all the way down to the studs. And at the end of that month, we just decided, let's try this out and put it up on Airbnb. And we kind of live in a tourist area. We're close to Pike Peak and Garden of the Gods and Pike National Forest. And so people like to travel here. So we got that wave of vacationers. In the course of those couple of years when we were really testing it out, my wife and I, Wendy, we found out we really loved hospitality.
It kind of sounds like you got into glamping by accident. Now you mastered the art of it.
Yes. I got into trouble too. I got in a lot of trouble, Laura. so
I can imagine.
Because I'm explaining that first year is totally illegal. It's not totally legal. It was an ADU in my yard. and I live on what's called rural residential property, meaning
Mm-hmm.
its primary use is for for residential
Mm-hmm.
uses, but there are special uses for the properties. So my first stop work order was from the building department because he said
Mm-hmm.
my deck was too big. It was 235 square feet. I talked with them and said, well, what can I do? They said, well, either
Mm-hmm.
shrink it down to under 200 square feet
Mm-hmm.
or get a permit. I chose the former. Honestly, of all my tents that I have right now are on raised beds, so they're
Mm-hmm.
actually ground. It's dirt underneath a mat. Then I have a smaller deck off the front that is not permitted, but it is allowed in the building.
Got it.
And guess what? They're smaller than 200 square feet. So it's kind of a way to it's a way to avoid a permit. But I could have got a permit too, so that would have been
Right.
just a $500 permit and get it checked out and get it done to code, and it would have been just fine.
Mm-hmm.
I just chose the latter. That's actually just building permits. There was the health department and the zoning department too that were kind of on my tail. That was at my third year when I was partnering with my neighbor. That
Mm-hmm.
was the year when I had the health department walk my property and told me what was allowed and not allowed, particularly with bathrooms, and what I was providing for the guests wasn't allowed, and I had to put in a $40,000 septic tank. Honestly, that was kind of the end of the story.
Yeah.
So that went in 2023. The zoning department guided me to getting my first special use permit, and that was a big process that I went through. I had some community opposition, pretty much one neighbor that whittled down to nobody. It just, I'm friends with my neighbors. That's the thing. So I kind of told them what I wanted to do, and they listened and said they kind of backed off on that first permit, and so that got approved administratively. So I got 8 units approved in 2022 that legitimized the units that I already had open. And here I am today. I still have those 8 units, so I'm still riding on that first permit, but now I have a modification for that second permit for 12 units, and then the other permit on the property across the side of town, I have no community opposition, so that one's set up for 24 units.
Got it. Okay, so you're going to also expand your existing current site and then build a new site. Wow, that's
actually they're both the same size. Actually, the one that with 24 units is smaller.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 6-acre property. This is 6.5 acre. I know, but it's a forest, so it's just the topography is much different. So having 24 units there, and they're going to be glass houses like the mirror houses. So we've got
the oud.
Bougie. so we're really going all out on that one.
Yep.
This one more of a tent thing, but it's wide open. It's a creek field. You've probably seen pictures, and so it's visible from the road and from neighbors and things like that. So it's just a different kind of look and feel of the property. And sometimes that matters when you're trying to develop a glamping property.
Yeah. Okay. So you've already gotten into the next question I wanted to ask, which was like around the challenges that you've experienced. So it sounds like the permitting was a challenge that you experienced, shortly after that first year of getting your existing structures and your site properly permitted.
I don't have many problems with quote unquote permitting. That seems to scare people, like, ooh, I don't understand. It's kind of like it's kind of difficult to understand. You actually are kind of an expert on it, but most people, it's like, reading Greek is reading the code. I would say the problems I've had have been with a couple of neighbors who when they are against you, it makes things very difficult because the town, the city, the municipality, the kind of the higher ups who are making the decisions for you, are trying to help guide you along, kind of have somebody complaining to them saying complaints aren't always valid. In fact, they really are. They almost like they make things up, and they're allowed to make things up, and go to City Hall and kind of complain and say, he's going to bring a tent community that's going to bring all our values down. And it becomes a fear thing. Like, oh my gosh, this glamping operation is going to ruin our neighborhood. And that has been disturbing, honestly, because I'm in a hospitality. I'm a nice guy. I want to be a nice neighbor. I want to be a good neighbor. And when neighbors, all it takes is a few, and just a few neighbors who kind of lock arms and accuse me and my family of ruining the neighborhood for everybody. That makes things difficult. It kind of drags you down. It makes it a bit of Debbie Downer kind of feeling. But I remember, I'm really bringing a lot of joy into people's lives. The venues that I'm setting up are wonderful. People just, people propose to each other on my property. They have anniversaries and they're on the honeymoon sometimes. It's really wonderful to have people enjoy themselves so much on my property. I mentioned that adrenaline rush that I get I don't want to give that up to satisfy a couple of neighbors whose arguments aren't even that good anyway.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Keeps me going.
Yeah. So let me just give a little context for the audience. Neighbors matter because while every jurisdiction is going to be unique, for the most part, establishing something like a glamping site or a campsite requires a special permitting process. It can be called different things in different counties, like a special use permit, special exception permit, or something else. And usually there is just due process in order to get that type of permit. So it involves submitting an application to the jurisdiction, a site plan usually, and you have to get approvals from a specific board usually. So like a Board of Zoning Appeals or a Planning Commission, something like that. In addition, your site will need, because that's just for the overall permission to do your planned project. Then you'll need building permits, health code permits, sometimes road permits. It really depends on your specific process. And in the special permitting process, usually there is a period where you have a hearing and the community can come and make public comments in support of or against your specific project. And sometimes the opinions of the neighbors can really sway the body, right? The planning commission or whomever, because they live there, right? They're human beings. And, to have people that are angry at them for approving, a project, I understand it, right? So that's what Chris is talking about when he's mentioning, how neighbors can really cause difficulty. They can sway, they can have some power over your project. And it can be a little nerve wracking because you could have something that, fits the letter of the law, but if the neighbors don't like it, it may not be approved. So,
yeah. In fact, I've got that whole drama. So I have 3 special use permits in my pocket. Okay. And one of them went to a public hearing, which is what you mentioned. Sometimes you go in front of the elected officials and have to plead your case. And that one's all online. I got it all online on my YouTube channel, and you can watch all 3.5 hours of the public hearing in front of the Planning Commission where I got it voted down on a 7-2 decision. Wow. And then I went to the Board of County Commissioners and got voted up on a 3-1 decision. Almost failed it. It was really dramatic.
Wow.
It's like a courtroom drama. And I had a law firm actually represent me, and my neighbors hired a lawyer too, and he gave a whole presentation against me and stuff. So it was pretty dramatic. And in the end, I won, which is great. But also in the end, I went up and shook hands with my neighbors, and we were all kind of in the same boat of whatever the commission comes up with, whatever the the Board of County Commissioners come up with, we're going to be fine with. They had their arguments, I had my arguments, and we went with it. And I won by the hair of my chinny chin. But you know what? I would have been fine with losing by the hair of my chinny chin too. And it would have said, okay, I guess I'm back to 8 units and not 12, and we would have kept going on. So
yeah, wow. So it sounds like if folks really want some advice on how to navigate that whole process, they really need to subscribe to your channel and check out your videos and watch that particular video. I'm sure it'll give them some good insight to help them prepare for what could be coming. I think it's always good to walk in eyes wide open.
If I could mention that, because it's there's a lot of illegal glamping operations out there. In fact, I have a video on there saying they're really everywhere. I could go on Airbnb and just look for glamping in El Paso County, and there's a good 50 glamping operations going on, and they're probably all illegal. And there, because there's really no enforcement agency going out and trying to find them. Okay, you're not running crack labs in your basements. You're running glamping operations and bringing joy into people's lives. So it's hard to justify actually enforcing those kinds of things. However, so that saying, people could just get away with what I got away with for the first few years. However, that's really not legitimizing your business. I mean, it's really flying under the radar, hoping you don't get caught with anything. And you might put some money in your pocket, but you're really not a real business. You just got a job, and you're sweeping up some money. But I encourage people, and that's what Glamping Guy is about, is legitimizing that. You know, building my subtitle is building safe, legal, and profitable glamping operations on your private property. It's that private property, you got it. You might have the most beautiful piece of property in the world. Building that safely, meaning like sound structures that people feel comfortable in and can enjoy. But then also legal, meaning you're working with the jurisdiction and you're getting those permits correct, and you're actually a legitimate business in your community. And then, of course, profitable.
Yep.
We all want to be
right.
profitable. And,
that's right.
And but it's got to kind of be in that order, you know, safe, legal, and profitable glamping operations. And that's what Glamping Guy is about. That's all my classes and consultations are move people in that direction.
That's great. The thing I think that people don't necessarily think about is the reputation they could be creating for themselves when they do illegal and then they get caught. And then what if you do want to get legal? I think in your case, you were lucky that your county was willing to work with you. But that may not be the case in every community.
Getting away with it, I think, are over. You know, that like I was lucky in the 2019, 2020 in the fact that nobody knew what glamping was. You know, they looked at you weird. It's like, what, camping? I said, no, glamping. Camping? No, glamping. And it's like, there's so much education that you had to have to bring people up to snuff of what really glamping was. Like I said, I didn't even know what glamping was, and there wasn't even a term in my head when I started glamping. Those days are over. I mean, the glamping has so taken over such a significant market share of outdoor hospitality. Everybody wants in on glamping. So now when you talk to a planner or an enforcement officer or the building department, they know exactly what you're trying to do. And so it's like if you try to play naive, they're not going to fall for it. They're going to know exactly what you're trying to pull one on me. But I do say that if you do get dinged, that's kind of how most people get into it. They do something like I did, and they just kind of roll into it. And then they're like, yeah, maybe I am doing something not kosher to the law or against some sort of rules. And then they get dinged. Well, I'm always for, get undinged. You know, figure out what the code is, figure out what you have to do to come into compliance with the jurisdiction. And all the jurisdictions are different. And all county, city, town, HOA, whatever you're in, you just got to figure that out. It's time to put the thinking cap on and study and research and figure out what you can do. And then even if you can't do it, you still apply for a variance. Probably there's all sorts of ways to do what you want to do. In general, most jurisdictions do respect you as a landowner wanting to do something creative with your property, and they'll work with you and they'll go, oh, you want to do this? Well, you might not do it exactly the way you had in mind, but what about this?
That's right.
I'll give you an example, like with the building department. That I mentioned, the raised beds. That was my discussion with the enforcement officer. You know, he's saying that, I'm sorry, that deck is out of code. Darn, but it's safe. Well, yeah, I know it's safe. I'm not going to tell you to tear it down anytime soon, but you got to get it to code. Well, what if it was a raised bed? What if it was on the ground? Well, then it would be fine, he said. Oh, well, okay. You know, it kind of leads to this. I asked him specifically, what if I put it on a raised bed with timbers and it would be dirt with a tarp over it? Would that be okay? He said, yes, that would be fine. Boom. I got my plan, and I managed to still have a beautiful tent in my backyard, and be in compliance with the code. And that was suggested by the enforcement officer. I've really met an enforcement officer who truly wants to shut you down. Have you? I haven't.
I haven't. I have met county employees who just
underpaid.
Yeah, they're all underpaid. But I think I am a regulator, right? So I understand how we think, and that is there's a box that's built and there are things that fit inside the box. And if it doesn't fit inside of the box, then it's a no-go usually. But like you said, there's more than one way to get to the goal. It may not look exactly how you want it to look, but if you have an overall goal of having a tent in your backyard that you can rent out on a short-term basis, keep your eye on that prize. Then you just talk with your local jurisdiction employees about how you can achieve it. And I think it was really smart of you to figure out, okay, what are the ways that I can have this structure and not need any permits? Like what can I do as far as the deck, as far as the water, as far as the sewage, and then identify, okay, well, what are the specific things that I need to permit and what can I avoid permitting in order to get this thing up quickly? That was, I think, really smart. Okay, so I feel like we've covered sort of like the permitting and how you got there pretty thoroughly. Can you talk about running the day-to-day? What does it look like to manage Monument Glamping? Like, are you cleaning? What's your guest interaction like? What does the day-to-day look like?
Yeah, the day-to-day, everybody runs it differently. And I know I shouldn't be running it the way I'm doing it, but I should have. Let me just tell you how it's done. Okay. We run everything through a program. It's called an OTA, an online travel agent. IGMS is what I use. It's not an OTA. OTA is like Airbnb and
is what you book it through. How do people book do you have a direct booking website?
I do. If you go to monumentglamping.com, you can see my website. It's live. And there is a booking component to it. And I use a program called IGMS. And that actually manages my customers in a software. And so I'm able to book through the OTAs like Airbnb, Vrbo, HipCamp, and a direct booking option that I can plug into my website. And then that's how I rent out and make money off of rentals. And there's a self check-in process, so we don't always meet our guests, and they're able to just take care of themselves. We have a number of cleaners. So my wife Wendy manages the cleanings. We have, I think, 3 non-Jube family members who come on and do the cleans, and we pay them per clean.
Got it.
Some basic maintenance. My son is hired on a monthly rate to just keep the yard clean and keep things trimmed up and grass mowed. And then marketing is something that I'm getting more and more into. Social media marketing. We do some paid advertising, but I actually been advised not to do so as much as I do, or be wiser at it to get those paid bookings. I'm trying to get more and more direct bookings compared to the online travel agents. So I'm at about 35% are direct bookings. It's actually pretty good, not all things considered. I used to be like 5% when I first started doing direct bookings. What that means is that someone comes to my website and they directly book with me. So the Airbnb takes nothing, the OTAs don't take anything. And but I have to have processes in place, like an insurance package. I have an insurance package that's extended from the regular insurance that some of the OTAs kind of tout, those kinds of things. We also have revenue stream coming in from what we call enhancements. So if you go to our website, you click on enhancements, there's a whole bunch of extra stuff you can get. Like we have tubs on each one of our units, but we have I think we call it the trough enhancements or the water enhancements. That's what we call them. It comes with a couple robes, a couple towels, some soaps, some salt, stuff like that. So they could actually enjoy their tub with more than just filling it with water and enjoying it. And we have things like we have a Colorado cookout, so it's our own little food and beverage option. So we might make them a couple of burgers and stick a whole bunch of stuff in a cute cooler, and they cook it themselves on the grill, because all our units have grills.
Wow.
And we sell propane for their stoves and water and stuff like that. We're trying to get to the point where we make so if we make $100 off of a rental, we
Mm-hmm.
make $50 off of our extras.
Yep.
And try to kind of, that's the sweet spot for hospitality, is that those extras boost your income up quite a bit.
So you've already started to talk about what's next. It sounds like getting deeper into marketing, and then building out this 24 unit site. Talk a little bit more about that. Are those all going to be 24, the Oud mirror cabins, and what are your next steps?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Oud, because Oud is who we started with. However, I'm blessed with being the father of a family of contractors. So I have a lot of my sons have grown up, and they're very handy with building things. I mentioned the container homes are actually built by one of my sons. He graduated from welding school and ended up building these container homes, cut them in half, and now we build these nice container homes. So, so that's something that I leverage that. So I'm not buying brand new Oud homes. I'm just copying him.
Nice.
And we actually have talked to the owner of the Oud homes and stuff like that. We're kind of friends, so I don't want to sound like I'm really copying him. We're just building our own things. That's what we're doing.
Absolutely.
And so we've got a model in place, and my son Micah, who bought the property, he's actually the kind of the financier. He's the capital guy, and so he bought that property, and he's going to flesh that out to be those Oud-like homes.
Got it.
Your listeners might even not know who Oud is. OOD, the guy down in Texas who makes these beautiful glass homes, and we're going to be replicating that here. And then here on this property, we're going to have 7 container homes and 5 tents.
What final advice would you like to leave with the folks that are watching this video?
I would like to go back to what I said before about keeping it on the straight and narrow, meaning you remember why you're doing this, and that'll get you through those tough times, because we talked about the tough times of getting dinged, and it doesn't feel good when a neighbor doesn't like what you're doing, or doesn't feel good when an enforcement officer sends you a letter. All the letters sound nasty, and they really make you feel like, boy, this isn't worth it, or this isn't a good thing that I'm doing. It really is a good thing. And I could go on and on, Laura, about just the wonderful, I'll give you one good example. There was not too long ago, it was this summer anyway, where someone came with his wife, and he left a note in our little catalog, our book that we have in the tents. And he said, "My wife fell in love with me again." It was just kind of like this little hearts and stuff, and it's like, I don't know his story. I don't think I even met him. I just knew he was coming with his wife for the weekend, and but he found that kind of retreat that he and his wife, I guess, needed in their lives. And they weren't travelers and vacationers in a big RV or something like traveling through. They were just busting out of Denver. They needed a place for solitude and relaxation, and they found it on my property. I mean, I just can't. I can't trade that for anything.
Wow, I feel the tears welling up in my eyes. That's incredible. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Chris. All right, we did it.